topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good morning. It's good morning for you all in California. We're here in beautiful Florida where it's afternoon. Welcome to the Ask the Expert show. 16 years of bringing on the top experts in the U.S. in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. For our first 10 years, we did this show on radio in about 25 markets. And now it is so much easier. We found the most exciting production company. We're on probably 70 to 80 platforms, all the top platforms. And Ask the Experts is a way to get your message out, to educate people. And believe it or not, it actually increases your client exposure. Today, we're going to be talking about public insurance adjusters. And I got to tell you, I actually had a major leak in my house about 12 years ago. And I'm going to ask Juan to put a commercial on because I believe they're calling in right now. Please put a commercial on, Juan.
K. Bender Rembaum is a full-service community association law firm dedicated to the representation of community associations throughout Florida. On kbrlegal.com, you can learn more about their offices in Pompano Beach, Palm Beach Gardens, Orlando, Tampa, as well as throughout Miami-Dade by appointment. Several K. Bender Rembaum attorneys are board-certified specialists in condominium and plan development law and assist clients with all matters of community association legal issues while keeping them up to date on new developments that affect their associations. K. Bender Rembaum is also a well-known provider of free legal education for managers and board members. Contact K. Bender Rembaum today by calling 800-974-0680. That's 800-974-0680 to reach any of their locations. You can also visit them online at kbrlegal.com or write to them at info@kbrlegal.com.
And we are back with the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV with your hosts, Steve-O, Sophia, and their expert guests.
Hey, I'm sorry about that. We do a live show. Most of the shows are pre-recorded and they don't have the problems you do when it's a live show. But you know what? I've even seen CNN and Fox freeze up before. It happens. Anyway, our great guests are with us, both Robert Crown and Joseph Fernandez of Crown Adjusting. It's good morning to you guys, but it's good afternoon to us here in Florida. Let's see. There they are. Okay. We are set. Good morning, guys.
Good morning. Good morning, Steve.
Hey, Steve-O.
Hey, this is tough for me to go good morning when I'm like at 2:07 here on the East Coast, and your show covers most of the western part of the United States. So most of your people are on Pacific Standard Time. But hey, welcome. I'm glad you're here. I was just getting ready to tell people how important a public adjuster is. And I know for a fact because I tried to do one my home 12 years ago without a public adjuster. And finally, a friend of mine told me, he said, "Why don't you get a public adjuster?" I had no idea what a public adjuster is, but we're finding out that even here's 12 years down the road, and there's still so many people who don't know what a public adjuster. So, first of all, I want you both because I don't know if you saw the numbers for the last 2 months, but your show has really caught on fire. Let's reintroduce you guys. Let's start off with you, Robert.
How do you do, folks? Robert Crown. I'm a licensed public adjuster here in California. We also practice in other states, but that's by individual license. My colleague and protege is Joseph Fernandez. He's with me. I've been in the industry for quite some time, and we offer a service to folks that really don't know where to turn when they have a large property insurance claim. Our goal in any case, whether it's a small claim or a large claim, is to provide knowledge and expertise in the area of first-party property claims, how you begin to put it together, how you deal with your insurance company, and how to position yourself not to have a knockdown, drag-out fight from day one. And people hire us for that very same reason.
Thank you. Okay, Joseph.
Hi, so my name's Joseph Fernandez. I'm also a licensed public insurance adjuster. I've been with Robert now going on almost about 3 years. And, one of the things that we are very impassioned and motivated in doing is representing and advocating for clients who have no other place to turn and trying to adjust their claims where they're in a place where they don't have the knowledge, the expertise, or the know-how to get to the finish line. So we're there to act as an advocate, a fierce, strong advocate on their behalf, and also, serve as someone who has the knowledge and expertise to negotiate their claim with the insurance company in hopes of settling the claim at a satisfactory amount where there's more than enough money to do the work for the contractor that they're hiring and also cover what our services are charging. So we're tasked with a very difficult job, but we have a lot of success because we put our clients first and foremost. And we have a lot of very strategic manners in how we do our work. So it's a pleasure to be here, and we're happy to be talking about what we do.
Exactly. I got to tell you, and this does not hold true for every claim that goes in, but the insurance company, this is 12 years ago, offered me $36,000. And I got to tell you, I would have taken it. I would have said, well, I'm not happy with it, but I guess that's it. And of course, they were real nice to me too, like I was their best friend. But I ended up, when I got a public adjuster, I am not exaggerating. I ended up with $135,000. Now, again, every claim is different, but I'm telling you, I just look at my case, and this shows you how important a public insurance adjuster is. Robert, I don't know if people don't even know how you even charge. They come into your office, they sign up with you. They don't have to write a check, do they?
No, but it's important they understand how we work. Picking up on something that Joseph said, I think it bears mentioning that if you are dealing with an insurance company and the claim goes from, $250,000 to $600,000, we're taking a percentage because that's how public adjusters typically charge. Sometimes if we're called as expert witnesses, we can work on an hourly, but our skin in the game is, hitting the ground running and making sure that people don't make mistakes. So most of the time, our fee is well earned after a lot of work and a lot of time. And if people were going to say, what's the downside? It does take a little longer with us, but that's because we're providing a high level of credibility in making claims to the insurance company that are justified. They may not want to pay, but they're obligated to work with us to get to a number that's acceptable to us and to our client.
I'm
Our fee does.
Go ahead.
Our fee. I'll just say this because it's important. Our fee does come out of the proceeds. No one's going to tell you that public adjusters work for free, but typically, once the claim is established and agreed to, you're entitled to X amount of dollars with no strings attached, and the amount that the insurance company may withhold, you have to do some other things to ensure that you are spending the money to get that. But I think what we try to do in almost every case is our clients able to see where they started, where they ended up, and we are taking our fee from that number. We never tell people that we can't guarantee people that we're not going to cost them money. But when you see a claim go up by 300%, our clients are pretty much of the same mind we are. We did a hell of a job.
Joseph, what does the policyholder need to be aware of when they are considering filing a claim? If they have like a loss, large or small, is there one thing they should consider prior to filing the claim?
Well, every claim is different. In the case of the type of loss that you experience, the type of policy you have, the type of adjuster you're going to have. The biggest thing that we get a lot of phone calls for people that either they haven't yet started the process of filing the claim, and they've never had to in their entire lives of home ownership, and now all of a sudden something has happened. And when something like that new presents itself into someone's lives, they kind of get into this place where they don't want to make a decision because they're worried of the repercussions they might face either from the insurance company or really just by the insurance company due to the nature of California, where a lot of insurance companies are canceling and not writing policies due to all the issues that we've been having due to wildfires and such. So some of the things that are important for someone to consider is you need to figure how much of your property was affected by that loss. One of the ways you can do that is by getting a contractor's estimate completely independent of the insurance company, so that contractor's estimate could essentially put a number in terms of damage and scope of damage into perspective. So if that's something that breaches your deductible of, say, $5,000 or $2,500, and at that point, it's probably worth pursuing and filing a claim because it's much, much higher than that threshold of your $25,000 or $5,000 deductible. Because if not, you're going to have to come out of pocket, which you have insurance so that you don't have to do that. And most people, if they end up spending another $1,000 above their deductible, they'll probably elect not to file a claim. But if it's something over double, triple, and it breaches that amount, I always recommend that you file the claim, regardless of whatever repercussions you may face. Because if you don't, you're going to come out of pocket regardless. And there is an insurance company out there that might cover you, and your policy may be a lot more expensive than what you're paying now, but you kind of have to weigh the options. Is it worth paying out of pocket, or getting canceled, perhaps potentially getting canceled, and paying a little bit more per month. So that is really dependent on your own situation.
I'd like to add something there, only because real life, the questions mirror real life. I got a phone call the other day from, I think, a young woman on the East Coast calling about her dad. And many people take charge. Nobody really takes pleasure in having to file a claim. So as we got into the discussion, she's talking to me about a water leak and the amount of money they had already spent doing the cleanup. They filed a claim rather late. So she's asking me what a public adjuster can do. And the mere fact that he didn't take pictures, filed the claim pretty late in the process, and the insurance company never had a chance to investigate it. She asked me what can be done, because the claim was actually rejected by her dad's insurance company. I sent her to an attorney. You can open a claim up or file a claim after the fact, but you better have really good evidence as to what happened and how it happened, because many water claims are denied. We get calls all the time about water claims. We're saying no to them more frequently than not these days because they're all problematic.
Yeah, we got a lot of questions, and I got to tell you, it shocked me. And I think I know the reason, because they just caught, or they finally arrested the person who started the fires in the Palisade area. And I guess that's why I had 5 or 6 people ask me, is there a difference if it's maliciously done or if it's something God made?
It's every claim is investigated, even especially claims for theft and burglary, but the insurance company is still obligated to honor it. It would be hard to say that a wildfire started by a human being would. I mean, we know that's not an act of God,
Right.
but there are policies that actually do specifically limit the amount of a recovery for certain types of insured perils, like a tree that falls down and does a lot of damage to your roof. Depending on how it's reported, that could be excluded as an act of God, but most policies will cover that. They may limit the amount they'll pay for tree removal, but if a tree damages your home or a fence, that is a covered loss. The peril that you would what caused it would be more akin to a storm, wind-driven rain, or wind in general. But you got to be careful. You really do have to be careful how you report it. And some policies will specifically limit or exclude a loss that occurs through an act of another, like a contractor that's working on your building and doesn't bother to tarp the roof while he's busy replacing it. The insurance company might say, well, why should we cover it when it's the contractor's fault? Go to them. That opens up a very interesting question about liability. What if the roofer's insurance company takes their sweet time, but you've got to do things really quickly to make sure there isn't additional damage over time? We're talking from our own immediate experience now, because I think that sort of gives people an example of some of the things they might eventually have to deal with themselves, or they know somebody that's dealing with something similar.
Well, I just got a supreme compliment from one of our viewers. It says, this is the third show I have watched, and it has really taught me a lot. It has actually made me go back and really read my policy. Do you find a lot of people don't understand or read their policies? I know I sure have.
You want to answer that?
Yeah. In this day and age, the fine print is not something that we all love to read. It's kind of culturally one of the things that we trust, and we assume that it's not going to come back to haunt us whenever we're doing anything that requires fine print. In this day and age, when it comes to insurance policies, because of the situation of where we're at, the climate that we're in with California and other states as well that have an alarmingly high number of disasters and fires and whatnot, best believe that the insurance company is doing and making changes to essentially cover their behinds to make sure that they're essentially reducing their risk. And they're doing this by hiring very savvy attorneys to write these policies, because at the end of the day, they pay out a lot of money when these claims happen. And their goal is to mitigate their damage and reduce the amount of money they pay. And by doing that, they make changes to the policy. So just because you might have even read your policy from the previous renewal, that doesn't necessarily mean when you get a new reinstatement that it is the exact same policy. So even I always recommend that clients reread their policy even when they're being reinstated, because there could be changes that will affect you that maybe you were covered previously on, which you may not be covered on now. And that makes all the difference, because if there's something that you find that is not to your liking, you bring that up now before it is into effect. Because at that point, then if something happens and you were covered on it before, you may not be now. So really important to read the policy. We've done policy reviews for clients. If someone asks for a real in-depth review, we will charge for our time. But we are willing to help people kind of on a one-off basis if we feel like they're going to need help in the long run. But you can always ask your agent, your insurance agent. They're getting paid every month. They should be the ones providing you with the information and making you aware, because they're working for you. They don't get to just collect the money and not do their due diligence in informing you on what that is. So I always recommend that you, as the policyholder, hold your agent accountable and say, hey, any changes here? Anything that I should be worried about? Because, I don't want to have any surprises. So that's what we recommend, is to go back to your agent.
In the California climate, every year it's something else, but periodically we'll get calls out of the blue that someone sort of connected the dots, and they realized that they should talk to a licensed public adjuster to see how they're insured and whether or not they have enough insurance to begin with. And that's a great place to start for someone that might be tuning into the show and is asking the very same question. How do you figure out if you own a 3,000 square foot home and you paid $1 million to $3 million for it? You certainly want to make sure that you have a decent amount of coverage, or more coverage than you need, but that is the exception. So asking those questions when somebody calls me out of the blue, I compliment them significantly, because very few people do that before the fact.
Yep.
And just because the agent tells you, over the phone that, oh, you're fine, you need to understand how the policy limits were designed, whether you have extensions of coverage for code and ordinance that would increase the cost to replace it, or whether you have something buried in the language of the policy that doesn't allow you to collect dollar for dollar because you have a condition in the policy called coinsurance that requires that you spend X amount of dollars for the amount of coverage that you have. When people find out that they have this language in their policy, they ask me, I wasn't aware of coinsurance. And all I can say to them, because I don't know that it's necessarily a conspiracy, But the insurance companies do not want to be shouldered with a $2 to $3 million risk. So they might put that in the policy anyway, because otherwise they're not going to write the policy at all. So knowing about that in terms of whether or not you would have the ability to have that part of the coverage changed, you've got to know it, before a loss occurs to see if that's something that can be handled responsibly, either by you buying more insurance or asking for an endorsement that would waive that condition. It's a policy contract, and we're not attorneys, but we have been schooled on how to understand the coverage and how to advocate for our client and point them in the right direction when there are problems that occurred through no fault of their own.
We got a text from Santa Fe, New Mexico. I'm really enjoying your show. I want to know, how come insurance companies don't cover termites? The companies that don't cover termites must have never had a problem because they do major damage to your home.
I think termite is an exclusion. Vermin and insects tends to be an exclusion on most policies. And again, that's kind of ringing true back to our previous portion is understand your exclusions really well, especially when if you're going and you're buying a new home and you might have some indication that you might have termite damage and you're like, oh, well, it's okay, I'm going to get insurance and it's going to cover it. That is when the time to do your due diligence is important, because none of us can ever assume that we're going to be covered and the insurance company don't worry, the insurance company has my back. They'll cover it. No, not necessarily. So typically termite damage is an exclusion due to, on most policies, I don't know of any policy that covers for vermin or insect, but that is something that is regularly excluded due to it causes a lot of damage. And so that a lot of damage equals a lot of dollars. So I'm not sure at some point it was ever included, and Robert can speak to that. But
I can address that. I don't have the perfect answer, but I would say this. When you think in terms of mold, which is something that occurs after you have major water damage, most policies have limitations for mold. And then when you get into a tricky situation where you want to be insured for just about anything, there are some policies with, the much more expensive insurance companies that provide what's called a difference in conditions, which is a broader type of coverage. I'm not an expert in this, but some of those difference in conditions policies cover everything. And there are even some out there, very small, it's like a minority of them, that have extended replacement costs that don't actually have a limit. They're very rare. And up until 1992, you could find them with many major insurance companies, guaranteed replacement costs. After the first major firestorm in California, which was in 1991, we ran across many policies that had unlimited coverage. And so a lot of those folks, some of them handled their claims on their own. Some of them used public adjusters, but all of them ended up collecting more than their stated limit because of that endorsement that provided 100% bump or increased. And in some cases, they didn't even have a limit. So, but those policies are gone. In terms of how to insure for that policies, we frequently, I love talking to people to try to help them. It's what we call paying it forward in our line of work. And a lot of our competitors don't do what we do because, they're busy hustling new business. I'm not saying that's bad. you've got to be paid for what you do, but you can give people a lot of guidance and direction while they're sort of struggling to figure out what they should do next. And in terms of answering your question, I would just say you have to know how to navigate it. In the case where an insurance company drags their feet and they say, well, we don't cover mold. And then as you get into the weeds, you find out that because the insurance company was not giving the policyholder any advice whatsoever, they ended up waiting a long time, long enough for mold to grow. Or you find out a little further in that the insurance company brought out another consultant to verify what the consumer had already been told by a water damage specialist. When we're involved and they delay in approving this mitigation that has to happen in a timely manner, we document it. And we don't want to, we're not going to cave on a position they take with regard to mold when their own responsibility, which would have been to advise the consumer on what they needed to do, instead of second guess them and bring out a third party specialist who's not even a contractor, who says this doesn't need to be done. In the guise of the insurance company's goals, they don't want to do more than is necessary, but the adjuster behind the desk who's telling them, well, we're not going to pay for that because it doesn't need to be done. I would ask that same adjuster, are you a water damage specialist? Have you even come out to look at the damage? We established that. And that opens up the issue of the insurance company's own participation in creating the conditions for a consumer to be hurt financially by that insurance company and their representatives' behavior.
Here's a text from Herb in Brentwood, California. I have watched many shows on public adjusting, and I must tell you, you have the best show. This has got to be a cousin of yours. It has to be. Anyway, what I would like to know, because what I understand now is you never know when an emergency is going to happen. Can one of you walk me through what happens if I have an emergency, say flooding? What do I do? Do I contact you first? And once I contact you, what is the procedure you go? And thank you for your show.
I'm going to let Joseph answer this first. I suspect we're going to have different answers.
That's okay.
But go ahead. Yeah, I think it'll give you some perspective because this is oftentimes misunderstood.
So, first thing that needs to be done is you need to stop the water source from continuing to flood. Whether that is a busted supply line, a severed water pipe, whatever that is, shut off the water, turn it off. After doing that, you need to call your insurance company right away, inform them of what's taken place, file a claim, and get your phone and just start recording everything. Take videos everywhere, even areas that you don't think are affected. Take videos because they probably are. Once you've done that, call a water mitigation company, not a construction company, a water mitigation. If you need help understanding who is a good water mitigation company, you could ask the insurance company, but I do caution you on using anyone that they just tell you. Do your research. Look at the online reviews. Make sure that it's not someone that has had a lot of bad press or bad reputation. Not every water mitigation company is created equal. There are a lot of them out there. They're not all good. After you've done that, call us. You can call us. We can go out. We can inspect the claim. We can see if it's something that we can help you with. We can see if it's something that we feel like is I guess there's enough for us to earn our fee, and also make sure that there's enough damage to warrant involvement with a public adjuster. And at that point, when the water mitigation company gets there, you work on stabilizing the property, drying it out as best as possible, having them remove as much of the interior finishes that have come in contact with water. Again, you want to stabilize. You don't just want to gut the whole building. You want to stabilize, because then what's going to happen shortly after is the adjuster is going to call you, and he or she will set up an appointment to go walk through everything. And then after that time, that's when most of the mitigation / demolition happens inside the house. And if you had already retained a public adjuster by that point in time, we would have been there with you to walk the loss with the adjuster to ensure that your needs are put and your interests are put at the forefront, so that the adjuster doesn't have the opportunity to downplay the damages and say, it's just the flooring. Well, no, the walls are affected too. No, it's just the flooring. We're going to remove the flooring and we'll save the baseboards. They can be saved. We wouldn't allow that to happen. We'll set the record straight at that point. So those are the steps. I'll let Robert weigh in if I missed anything.
You didn't miss anything. Touche. I would say, though, in light of the complexity of water claims, you could call in a mitigation company, and there really does have to be some direct communication with the insurance company, so that anything that we did in terms of advising a client, even before we were hired, because we might not be able to get out there to know how extensive it is. That's why what Joseph suggested is really critical: taking videos, taking pictures. A mitigation company that might come through a recommendation, we tell them to, if they have a thermal camera or they have a moisture meter, they would literally test all the walls that are wet. They would put some painter's tape, 2-inch painter tape on that area to outline where those sheetrock finishes or any finishes are still wet. Because at some point in time, an insurance company that does nothing, is the policyholder jeopardizing themselves by not getting these things done? And the simple answer to that question is yes. But it's also really important that there's a buy-in by the insurance company. So if we're not going to be out there anytime soon, I just tell clients, if you feel that the person that's out there on behalf of the water mitigation company is reputable, then they won't mind you putting on their authorization, their work authorization, subject to the insurance company's approval. And if they're that confident that what they're doing will be approved by the insurance company, let them do it. But if you don't get that done and the amount of work that they do is disputed, they're not going to go away and not get paid. They're going to ask you to pay them privately.
Here's somebody who's opening up a new business in Beverly Hills, wants to know, I have an art gallery and I'm really worried after listening to your show that I am covered properly, because many times the artwork is bought and new artwork is brought in. How would you suggest we're covered, especially for leaks?
That's a great question. If we're talking about consignment artwork that's brought in by the painters themselves, they're going to want you to be properly covered for the value of their art. And that might be what the gallery owner pays for it. So there's got to be, it's almost like going to a dry cleaner. They have what's called a bill of lading. At any point in time, they have general insurance for the amount of clothing that is brought in to be processed. Any kind of insurance policy will have these uh, stipulations or fine print. And I don't know that the owner of that commercial space in Beverly Hills, I mean, if it's, if we're talking about very high end real estate, um, high rent, it's very likely that that landlord has a policy that is comprehensive for the conditions of water. I guess for the purposes of the multi-million dollar real estate developer as well as the homeowner, because even a large property, commercial property, those conditions and limits in that policy are much the same as they are for a homeowner. Most water leaks, if they occur and they happen slowly over time, they may not get covered. The damage that would result from a slow leak, it might be just the same as a very substantial sudden leak, but you do need to report it in a timely manner, and you do need to do what you can do to stop further damage from happening. But that person who's planning to open that gallery would talk to their own broker to make sure that regardless of the condition of the building or the landlord's responsibility for that building, that in the event of a loss, that their stock and the stock of their suppliers is covered. And most of the time it is.
It seems a lot of these letters we're getting, and you touched on it at the beginning of the show, they're afraid to file a claim for being dropped or having their premiums go up. What should they be aware of?
Well, they should be aware of the fact that not filing a claim could be just as problematic by virtue of the people that called me the other day. That owner is probably going to be on the hook for about $40,000 in repairs because he didn't do maybe what he should have done because he didn't want to bother. And maybe it's because most people have a pioneering attitude about taking matters into their own hands. I understand where people are coming from. I mean, I would ask someone who's really skittish, what's your deductible? Have you had anybody look at the damage and how much damage is there? Well, if the damage is, under their deductible, I wouldn't necessarily be telling them to file a claim, but I might say, just because you file a claim doesn't mean that you're on the insurance company's radar for being dropped or to have your premiums increased, especially if it's not your fault. And you're just alerting the insurance company just in case there's a lot more damage than you are aware of. And you want to reserve the right to go through with that process of filing a claim. Whether the insurance company is going to cover it or pay it is a separate matter. And in many cases, I tell people, not that I'm trying to talk myself out of a job, but no matter what, even for someone as skilled as Joseph and I in advocating for people, I mean, in terms of how often we get close to our number, we have some pretty good statistics, but we never guarantee people that the claim is going to settle for our number, because it probably is not going to settle for our number. And that's not because our number is inflated, because they're pretty skilled at minimizing what they want to pay.
Mm. After talking to both of you and finding out that there's some insurance companies that are more difficult than others, what should the consumer do if they're thinking of changing insurance companies, and when's the best time to do that?
In a climate like this, that's a very big concern for many people. And only because we talk to people all the time and allow our own professional experience dictate how to respond to that question without getting people really upset. I sometimes will tell them that when their policy is up for renewal and they have not had a loss in 3 years, that they actually shop, because in the event you have, any kind of damage, you'd be better off at least working with an insurance company that has a better reputation. And I would want to be careful about naming names, but many insurance companies in the last 2 years have decided not to provide coverage anymore to get out of California. And, we have a pretty proactive insurance commissioner, and the economy is hurt when people can't get insurance. They can't really. If you're getting a mortgage and you're buying a house, you're not doing it without a property insurance policy. And how could that be good for business if you can't? It's hard enough to afford to buy a property in California, but not to be able to insure it. No bank is going to lend you money.
Tell you what's so amazing about this show. It's a 50-minute show, and I've still got about 8 or 9 questions. The show goes by so fast. Let's tell everybody how they can reach you.
Well, I think it's scrolling below our.
This is for radio and Spotify who aren't able to see.
The nice thing about us is that most of the time they're going to get us on the phone. And we will try to walk people through the process if we're not busy with our existing clients. We also use a questionnaire that we send out to help us better advise the people that are consulting with us. But you find us through our website. You can find us through the National Association of Public Insurance Adjusters. It's our trade association. And our phone numbers, as you see below, 415-999-5519, and Robert at crownadjusting.com. Joseph is at 925-361-2994. Joseph at crownadjusting.com. And we can be found through Google. So you can look at our reviews.
I got to tell you, this is probably one of all of our 30 shows we do each month. This is probably one of our most complimented shows. You guys do such a great job. You'll be back again with us next month. We'll get to a lot of the questions we had today we couldn't get to. Guys, thank you so much. You always do such a great job, and we'll see you next month.
Okay, thank you, Steve-O. I liked your questions today.
Thank you. Thank you. You guys are great. See you next month.
Take care. Be well.
Thank you. Thank you all.
That's Crown Adjusting. These guys are so good. They cover a huge area of the western part of the United States. So give them a call. Hey, that's going to do it for us today. We'll be back again with you next week with more Ask the Experts. Thank you, Juan.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.